So I wanted to talk about this is interesting because in this game you've got these whispers in your ear. It really reminds me of the clip that we watched on Saturday when there was a clip of this guy, pretty big streamer. I know he's known for speed running Souls games, and he's playing God of War Ragnarok, which is a very well reviewed game, a very well made game. I'm really looking forward to playing it soon. I really love the first one. I'm pretty sure I'll really love the second one. But there's this kind of narrative around hand holding when it comes to games. In no other time has it been so clear the difference between two games that are both contending and competing for Game of the Year than Elden Ring and God of War. They're both fantastic games, right? And so they all meet the mark in terms of quality, in terms of story, in terms of difficulty. All these things like are pretty high for both games. There's really not a lot. I'm sure Elden Ring is probably a little more difficult. Souls games tend to be kind of max. They maximize that side of the difficulty spectrum. In terms of everything else, I mean, in terms of quality game, they're probably pretty close to each other. But the big difference that everyone's noticing, God of War is very handholdy. They have like a voice talking in your ear the whole time, like telling you what to do, making sure you can solve the puzzles. Like even in the middle of fights, like telling you what to do, how to beat the boss. I don't think that I'm sure that makes it easier somewhat. I haven't really looked at the UI so much, but people talk about, like Ubisoft games, how they're just so like, especially like latest Assassin's Creed games are like very UI heavy. There's always an icon on the map telling you where to go. You don't really even have to search around and look. It tells you exactly what quest is where to go for this, where to go for that, where the high points are, where you need to expand the map, where you need to go over here to do this mission, where the vendor is to buy this thing. And although Elden Ring is probably more in this way, I almost said accessible. I guess that's a way of saying it. It's a little easier to find some of those things. Like they've made like a hub world where you can get a lot of those things and you can fast travel there. And just the fact that fast traveling even exists is like that's not true for every Souls game the entire time. So the difference between these two games is just very apparent. It really hits hard when you're noticing and you're looking at like the gameplay, I think, from these two games. And so it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I think obviously the game of the year conversation always breaks down into like really a lot of toxic people yelling at each other on the internet, and it's kind of silly. But I think there is something to be learned a little bit about what players appreciate and whether or not a game goes too far with the hand holding. I hope game devs take notice that they can look at a game like Elden Ring, they can look at the lack of instruction, even though it's probably more instructions than you've ever gotten in a From Software game before. But compared to Western games, like a lot of Western dev games, there's like almost no instruction. And when you look at those two, and you look at that comparison, there's going to be this big gap. I think that there's going to be an interesting conversation. I hope that the game devs notice that. I hope Western game devs notice that. I hope the Ubisofts of the world that have just been like pumping out these Assassin's Creed games and the the other Ubisoft games. I can't remember like different all the different IPs that they have and they've made. It's sort of like become almost a joke that like these games, they're just so generic. Point A to point B to point C, and like you just do your thing and there's no exploration, you're taking away all the agency from the player almost because you're guiding them in the name of accessibility, right? But like you're kind of ruining the experience too. Maybe you're helping gamers that aren't as skilled or as experienced in games. I think the thing that I hope they realize is that you can't do both. You can't make it accessible for new gamers and also continue to make it fun for experienced gamers. You have to choose your audience. And that's fine. Like make a game, it's for these people. That's fine. But don't pretend like you can do it all, right?